Well, kia ora and welcome to this month's Tech Bytes. My name is Craig Young. I'm the CEO of the Tech Users Association. And it is my real privilege and pleasure this month to be talking to Dr. Lloyd McCann, who I've known for a little while now. Lloyd, you've graciously been part of a couple of our bigger events for both our Flint and our Tuans program, and a very well-received speaker, I might say as well. At that time, you were the CEO of Mercy Radiology, and I know a lot has changed since that, notwithstanding this little thing called a pandemic. So would you mind introducing yourself a little, including the things you're working on at the moment and some of the other things you're involved in?
Sure, kia ora koutou katoa. Firstly, great to connect again, Craig, and thanks for the opportunity. Love the work you're doing. So always a pleasure to be part of the kōrero, part of the conversation. So as you said, yes, a few things have changed. I've moved into the CEO role for Tamaki Health, one of New Zealand's largest primary and community care providers. And obviously there's a bit happening in that component of the sector, which I'm sure we can talk about. But yeah, also kind of trying to contribute a little bit more broadly. So still involved in a few initiatives on the technology side of things in health, still contributing to some work with the Accident Compensation Corporation. And then, yeah, most importantly, still being kept very busy by now 6-year-old twins at home who are delightful and hard work.
Yeah. Okay, great. Look, you've had quite a journey. I mean, I went back to your LinkedIn profile to have a look at it, and that doesn't always tell you everything. But yeah, can we just start the conversation with a few of the key skills that you've learned or experiences you've had on your journey to this point?
Thanks. Yeah, so look, it's always great to have the opportunity, I guess, to reflect. I think in recent times, attending medical students conferences and that type of thing, one of the things I have been reflecting on is actually how long I've been working in the sector. So that comes as a bit confronting sometimes. But no, actually, I think I've been very fortunate to have a broad experience within health, but then also importantly outside of health. So actually some of the things I've been reflecting most on are the opportunities and lessons learned through my time serving in the Territorial Force for the New Zealand Army. And also some of the work I did with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise when we returned from the UK initially. And I guess for me, the one of kind of the key take-home messages in that, and I think this is something we as a sector in health and a system in health struggle with sometimes, is that health is very special, but it's just as special as every other sector and industry. So if you look at, I guess, some of the trends in relation to adoption and use of technology, which I know we'll talk about again some more within health, you could make a very strong argument that we've been slow, we've kind of lagged in terms of the adoption and use of some of these technologies, particularly technologies that enable the consumer or the patient to do what they need to do for themselves. And then to come back to your question, I guess, just around reflections, what I do notice and I guess know with me is a lot of the skills and experiences and knowledge I gained through work in the Army and with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, I actually use on a day-to-day basis in my job, in my kind of day job in health. A lot of that comes down to leadership and people. Always talk about the sort of bionic approach we need to adopt in health, and that's around the interface between the socio-technical system, socio components and the technical components. And without good and strong leadership, actually, we may as well all go home and kind of pack our bags, right? It's about the people at the end of the day, and where you see good leadership enabled and leadership that empowers others through systems and organizations, that's kind of where the magic happens. And, if I reflect on my career to date, where we have been able to make progress and reasonable advances, it's always been through the collective action and efforts of individuals with common purpose, kind of aligned by common values, but enabled by very positive and strong leadership.
That's so cool. Look, one of the things that when I'm talking to people like yourselves and other CEOs and CIOs as I've done these interviews is just the journey that people take to get to the role they're in at the moment. But it's always interesting to go back to the beginning as well. So I know that you trained as a medical doctor. Can you tell us a little bit about what led you as a young person into that quite, it takes a long time to become one. So you've got to make a real commitment.
Indeed. Yeah, look, it's a really great question. Again, sort of have reflected, and through kind of later years of primary school and high school, I always thought I was going to go off and become an engineer, mainly because I loved MacGyver. So that was kind of where my head was at. But as sort of time went on, and in my later years in high school in South Africa, I got the opportunity to do some community service work in healthcare, different healthcare organizations, where I guess, what started opening my eyes was the realization that the need was pretty significant and very real in the South African context. And then equally coming to New Zealand, and when my family moved, we initially lived up north in Kerikeri. And so spending time up north, I guess seeing some of the inequity and the disparity in terms of, outcomes for people in certain populations, Māori, in particular in the Northland context, just made me reflect on where it might be possible to kind of make a contribution and make a difference. So I did hedge my bets. I applied for med school, and I also, at that point, actually, engineering had kind of gone by the wayside. I also applied to go to law school. Got an interview for med school, and I remember this sort of vividly. I was doing my basic training with the army at the same time, and got a call from my parents who said, "Oh, your letters arrived, and you've been shortlisted for an interview." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's great. I'm going to need to talk to, my staff sergeant about getting time off from basic training, which is actually something that's quite unheard of." Anyway, they did, and so I was, on a bus at midnight, coming back from Waiouru to Auckland for a 9 a.m. interview. Needless to say, the interview went reasonably well, and I sort of got in, and the rest of this, as they say, is history. But yeah, it's been driven by, I think, that real passion for people, and to some degree, I must say, also a naive view around what doctors do in society. And as my career's progressed and developed, I've recognized again that the opportunity for medical professionals, not just doctors, is actually again to contribute as broader leaders for societal change.
Yeah, cool. So let's draw that out a little bit, because, we're a technology organization. One of the key things that I know about you is about advocating for the use of technology to drive these consumer-centered experience outcomes. So what values of yours have driven that perspective, and how did you become interested in utilizing technology in this health sector?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it does stem from that very deep sense of kind of justice and what is right. And again, I've got a unique set of biases, I guess, growing up in apartheid South Africa. And so I think what I was able to observe again very early on through med school, and actually also through time in the army, was where you had opportunities to improve things like access, improve things like communication, improve things through information flow by utilizing some pretty amazing technology. Drives better outcome for people. So it kind of is that typical blend of, actually this is better for individuals, and you get some system benefits on, the safety side of things, the efficiency side of things, etc. I think the kind of rubber hit the road for me in terms of wanting to go and learn some more within the technology domain, and then actually work in that domain in my early years as a house surgeon in the hospital, where I guess a number of peers around me, we'd complain to each other about the technological solutions we had. We'd say things like, "Why are we still walking around with pages?" and that sort of thing. And I guess again through other experiences and positive experiences in kind of terms of stepping into a leadership role, I thought, well, actually we should try and do something about this rather than just moan about it. So got involved in a few projects and initiatives quite early on in my career around adopting new technologies to solve different problems. And the classic, if you take a user-centered design approach, kind of played out, right? When we started giving input and feedback, the technology improved. It was that kind of positive reinforcement loop that drove a lot of that early engagement for me.
Yeah. Look, I mean, now you're at the other end of the scale. You're a CEO. You've been a CEO at the pointy end of an organisation now since about 2018. If I can see that. But what were some of the gotchas or surprises that you saw when you took on the top role in an organisation?
Yeah, look, I think my first reflection is there are ongoing gotchas and surprises. I think that's one of the things I actually enjoy most about being in a privileged position to be in a leadership role. I think for me, sort of early on, I'd read lots about the kind of burden of decision making and being at the pointy end, like you say, the kind of responsibility and the sort of buck stopping with you and the board. But the kind of true weight of that is something I hadn't contemplated until I was actually sort of in the seat, so to speak. And that's also, with the Army experience, where again, from a pretty young age, I had the opportunity to lead platoons, lead companies, and that type of thing. I guess, obviously, with a slightly different purpose when you're sort of in the commercial, technological, and health world. The burden of that responsibility was something that did kind of hit me quite hard. And what I kind of relied and fell back on again was support from family, particularly Karina, my wife, but also, a number of the awesome mentors and sort of coaches I've had through my career. So other leaders that have kind of been there, done that. I think the other thing, and you mentioned the pandemic, the other gotcha was the arrival of COVID-19 on our shores. The surprise gotcha, or the nice gotcha for me, though, was actually how rapidly we as a health system were actually able to pivot and respond to a threat that ultimately sort of unified us not only as a system but as a country. And so again, there's a lot written and talked about around how risk averse we are on health, and yet overnight, because it literally was overnight, we pivoted from a traditionally face-to-face service delivery channel to a virtual service delivery channel like that. We made the decision, next day we were doing it. And so I think the nice gotcha, or the nice surprise for me, was actually the degree to which people's appetite for change and then the ability to actually engage in that change enabled by a technology was actually very high. And so the reflection for me was actually, how do we kind of build this into our culture more broadly, which is still a work in progress, to actually enable that to be the predominant paradigm for ourselves as healthcare professionals.
The simple one that got me was suddenly my GP could actually email my prescription to the pharmacy. It's like, been thinking about it for so long. Why couldn't you just do that? This whole writing things out was annoying.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to come back to you. I mean, you do have a unique perspective because of where you grew up, and you mentioned being in Kirikiri. So you're a leader in tech, so we're sort of stepping up a little bit now. What words of advice would you give to inspiring leaders, in particular, in trying to develop their careers? And I do want to come on this one. How to encourage more unrepresented groups, so like Wahine, Māori, Pacific, get involved in leading this digital economy?
Yeah, look, it's a really great question, and my reflection is you're doing an awesome job, and your organisation is doing an awesome job. So I would encourage other leaders to continue to support purpose and values-driven organisations like yourself. I think a critical thing for me, and it's difficult, but something I really try to engage in every day is consistently and constantly, both those words, continuing to check in around our own biases as leaders of organizations, because we've all got them. And, you know, in some instances, they're actually pretty scary. I think when we start doing that and sort of take ownership of that ourselves, our ability to be, you know, inclusive and have a slightly more kind of broad view around what diversity and inclusion actually looks like is markedly improved. Because I think unless we're deliberate about it, so this is my ask of other leaders, unless we're deliberate about it and actually, you know, working that into our decision-making processes on a day-to-day basis, we're just going to end up with more of the same. So I know, you know, there is a lot that's controversial about an approach like that. It's happening in health right now, actually, around the you know, the arguments for equity and fairness in terms of actually giving priority access to certain groups within the population. Again, I've clearly got a bias growing up in apartheid South Africa. Unless you do that, I don't think you can actually make progress. So yeah, my advice and my ask would be deliberate about this, and actually, you know, don't be afraid to step forward and say, well, no, actually, I'm deliberately looking to hire for this profile, or I'm deliberately looking to engage in this development program that allows us to, you know, bring Wahine Māori Pacifica into the decision-making table. We should do that because it's the right thing to do, but we should also do that because the evidence tells us, you know, in health and in broader society and other organizations, that when you've got diversity at the table, the outcomes you're able to generate across the board, you know, whether we're talking about health outcomes, community outcomes, etc., are markedly enhanced, because the plan and the solutions you develop are going to be so much more robust.
Yeah, great. Hey, look, it would be remiss of me to talk to you without asking you a question about the impact of future technologies on the delivery of health services. I mean, that's one of the things that you shared at the presentations at our conferences, which were most interesting. But, you know, thinking about it, what are some of the most exciting developments you think we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, look, there's a lot that is happening, and I think you know, it is pleasing to see that people are starting to engage more deliberately within this domain. So, you know, digital health, we're starting to realize some of the potential that it does offer. So I kind of try to think about this across sort of 3 dimensions. Dimension 1 is, how do we optimize the status quo? So I think something I'm excited about, you know, in terms of the year and now delivery, is the role automation will have to play in how we deliver services, and probably most impactfully, how we utilize, you know, various automation technologies and methodologies to streamline administrative service delivery. So, you know, that kind of use case you pointed out, prescriptions being written out and going to pharmacy, that's now all electronic, right? We still rely on a lot of paper shuffling around the health system to, you know, tell people about appointments and that type of thing. But we're starting to see now, you know, this is something Mercy led, and we're starting to see now the use of very, very kind of, you know, well-utilized approaches like online booking and other digital channels that actually, you know, puts the power in the consumer or the patient's hand to decide when I come and interact and engage with health systems. So that's really exciting for me in terms of, you know, the first dimension. Second dimension I think about is something I refer to as the transitionary dimension. So how do we actually utilize technology to enable us to go from point A to point B? And so a lot that is happening in this space relates to, again, enabling information flow between different healthcare professionals. So how do we move from, you know, operating as individual clinicians to actually operating and working as part of teams? Because we know when we work as a team, the outcomes we're generating from patients is markedly improved. And so solutions like clinical and patient portals are really starting to deliver great value in that space. And also we're seeing increased use and adoption of standards to enable some of that information flow, which is awesome. The third dimension is the transformative dimension. So again, it would be remiss of me to not talk about things like AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is a little bit scary. I think, we've seen things like ChatGPT come to market, literally go, up to 100 million users in 2 months, beat Facebook by 3 years and 10 months, in terms of use and adoption. Interestingly, I think that the reason healthcare professionals, again, need to engage in, the development and design of platforms like ChatGPT and other AI tools is that we know that success for, the ChatGPT platform is around, increased use. So the way ChatGPT has actually been trained from a healthcare perspective as an algorithm is instead of being accurate, it's been trained to be persuasive. So in some instances, we see it making up references from medical journals and that type of thing, right? So the transformative opportunity for AI is enormous. And I think we're already starting to see use cases where clinical decision-making is enhanced. Equally, if we're not deliberate and thoughtful about it, what we know will happen is that we'll, exacerbate inequity in terms of outcomes by virtue of lower access for, priority populations. So I think it's really important healthcare professionals engage in design development of those transformative or third dimension technologies like AI and other things. Robotic technologies would be another, sort of game changer. Things like, exoskeletons to enable people who have lost use of limbs. In fact, it was on the news the other day, first bionic arm transplanted onto a patient in the UK. That lady's life is changed, for the better. So there is a lot to be excited about. We just need to be sure we're deliberately stepping into engaging with these technologies so that we don't end up with unintended consequences.
Yeah, I really like that comment at the end. It's so important. We've been talking about AI this year. We've got a position out on AI, keeping the user at the center of AI. But it was interesting to see on my Facebook feed the other day, popped up, we had done events back in 2019 on AI, the start of it. And I remember the conversations, the presentations you made to our events, talking about the use of AI in radiology and stuff. So It's been around a while, but you're right. This ChatGPT thing this year has just exploded and consumers have seen it. That's really where it's come to.
Absolutely.
Look, I always ask this question of leaders at the end because I want to ask you a broad brush. You are a digital leader in Aotearoa. This is a nation-building thing. What big ideas do you think a country like ours should focus on if we want to move up the digital competitive ladder?
Yeah, look, I think that, and this is one of the great things about Aotearoa. I think we kind of always punch above our weight, bat above our average, whichever kind of sporting analogy you want to use. What I would kind of not caution, but what I would ask everyone to kind of, keep in mind is let's not become complacent around that though. Let's continue to push the boundaries and to challenge. I think, rightly or wrongly, because I think it's actually a very positive thing in a number of ways. The kind of age-old sort of tall poppy syndrome still comes back to bite us every now and then. We've got literally, and I know this because we've lived overseas and that type of thing, but we've literally got some of the smartest, brightest, most creative thinkers, in the world here in New Zealand. And we need to enable and unleash these individuals to kind of, go and not only benefit New Zealanders, but potentially make an impact on a global stage. So I think, one of my asks would be, let's again systematize the ability for, up and comers and creative thinkers to actually engage in development, design, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I think, organizations like yourself play such a critical role in that. Let's get the pathways open. We do need to continually invest in education, because again, I think that's just that kind of doorway to everything else improving. And we need to, to come back to some comments I made earlier, be very deliberate about how we, manage some of those educational opportunities to ensure that it's an equitable playing field. so that everybody has the opportunity to kind of, make a contribution. The final thing I'd say in that space is, I think, again, we're uniquely positioned to kind of describe and view and come to a landing on what the problems are, what the big problems are that we need to solve. And then because of that kind of nature to actually go on and get things done and get things, tested and then kind of rolled out more broadly, we really need to leverage and utilize that to a greater degree. So, again, cliched, fail fast, all of that type of thing, but all of those principles do actually work. And so, again, I'd be encouraging people to get things out into market, get things tested. The beautiful thing about technology is the ability to generate real-time or near real-time feedback loops. So, you can test and adjust on the way.
Cool. Look, I think it's been a real pleasure and privilege again to talk to you. Have you got any last comments or thoughts you'd like to share before we close?
No, look, thank you again for the opportunity, Craig, and just want to say thank you to you for your leadership, and to Tuan's for the awesome work it is doing. Love how you're keeping some of our political leaders honest by inviting them in to have these discussions. It's what we continually need to do, right? I did see a post on LinkedIn the other day, which was again very, very poignant. From an economist, a well-known economist, just around some of the, I guess, the political discourse that is happening. And that was, around the fact that, there's a lot of commentary, I guess, around, not focusing on the right issues or, petty issues and then that type of thing. And his reflection was actually our leaders are reflecting back, what we're prioritizing and what we're behaving. So, we've got to own some of that, and engage in discourse and conversation about the big issues, some of which you've touched on today, because ultimately, we make a huge contribution to the direction of travel for our country. So everybody's got to step up, basically.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, again, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you. People who are listening, you can see this again on our YouTube channel. It will be up there early next week, and it will also be available as audio on any audio platform that you can think of. I think I've just about got it everywhere. And you'll be able to listen to Dr. McCann again and again if you want to. That's some great pieces of wisdom and leadership in there. Next month, we're talking with Lee Timu. He is one of the leaders in the Māori tech sector in New Zealand, and we'll be talking about what they're doing and how they're looking to build that sector as well. So again, thank you so much, and mā te wā.